when you're starting a new role, right? First 1 to 2 months when you're adapting phase, how much of it, right, is really because work is really intense, and how much of it is really because you still don't understand the company, you don't understand the structure, you don't understand the nature of your work. So half of that could be learning time. When I first transitioned into banking, I've never worked in banking before. It was very, very challenging for me because first thing is I was still trying to figure out my actual job. That's the clarity part. But the other half of it is more like, oh, how does the bank actually work? How do they structure things? It's very, very confusing. So even though I worked hard, but I never once felt that, oh, it's not fair. This job sucks. I just came in first month. I'm really working so many hours. I didn't really think that. I kind of like sort of decided that, oh, okay, there are two problems here. The first thing is, how do I make sure that I understand my actual job, right? And that, requires conversations with my boss, my peers, and like all the other team members. So I was like, okay, that's my job, right? How do I use this template? How do I do all the due diligence? Which stakeholder do I need to talk to? That's like literally phase 1 and phase 2 of the corporate survivor. So I was like, okay, that's my day-to-day job, right? Which I'm like trying to figure out what's going on. Then the other half is me telling myself that, hey, Mei-Ping, it's your first time in banking, right? You don't know what the heck is going on. And if you continue to ignore it, it's going to be worse. So the other half of the time is like, I also tried to write down, like, okay, actually, what do I not understand? So what I found personally very helpful, because you see, right, if you don't tackle what you don't know, or you at least start by identifying what you don't know, eventually what is going to happen is that the busy days is just going to continue. What I started doing is more like, as and when I go through my work, right, if someone is commenting, or maybe like a specific terminology, or they're mentioning this specific department, basically I'm hearing things that I've never heard before. I will actually write it down. Then, I have a list of like terminologies that maybe has no idea what these are. But I'm like, okay, this is going to be my research, right? Research could be maybe after office hours, or I also had dedicated time during the weekends as well. So I was like, okay, right, I pull out this sheet of paper. I'm like, okay, this week, right, these were the terms that I heard for the first time, which I have no idea what these things are. That's what I did during the weekend. And you can actually think of it as like, hey, maybe, you have no work-life balance. But I kind of saw it differently. I was like, well, if I want to succeed in this place, and I've already gone through a proper thought process before accepting this job, and I know that this job allows me to grow, but right now it's growing pains. Why do we use the term growing pains? It's because the learning curve, right, is usually the steepest the first 1 to 2 months that you join the job. So it's like you can give up and decide that it's not for you. And there are certain circumstances in which it's really not for you, it's fine. But I think how I kind of looked at it is like, I use it as an information gathering process, and it may feel frustrating. And I think maybe, when I was like a lot younger, meaning like, the first 5 years of my career, that's what I always say, right? If you have worked for less than 5 years, everything feels confusing. So first 5 years, probably I was still kind of lost. But, during that time, it was really like, past 5 years where I had more realization of like, okay, it's an information gathering process. I cannot, magically speed up things because I'm going to miss stuff. So I kind of went through that piece by piece of like piecing that jigsaw, the corporate jigsaw puzzle together. So if you have really gone through module 1, right, I talk about the jigsaw puzzle, right? So the thing is that like when you join a new company, particularly you're joining a big company, or you join like a regional global team, that's more pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. It's not like your first job where everything's very simple, right? And then you have like 3 pieces of jigsaw puzzle patched together. Oh, okay, that's great. But when you join a bigger company, like things became complicated, you become more senior, or the fact that you have more experiences, like there are more pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that appear. So I always looked at it as to like, oh, every time I hear a word that I don't know, I'm like, okay, that's a new piece of the jigsaw puzzle. I'm like, where does this sit? I don't know yet. I'm going to write down my piece of paper. So it's like now, right, you can imagine like Mei-Ping has a bunch of like small pieces of jigsaw puzzle that I don't know where it fits. Okay, never mind. I keep like, this is the stack of the jigsaw puzzle. Okay. Then, as I talk to my stakeholders, I talk to my managers, right? I tried to understand, oh, actually this piece of jigsaw puzzle, I'm like, do you have any information? Like, where does it fit? So that's how, right? It's like, eventually I piece all the jigsaw puzzle together. It's not like over a period of a month, I did it. Sometimes it's over a period of some time. But it's like, once you know the mindset of like, okay, you know what? It's just that every time you find something new, it's just that you found a new piece of jigsaw puzzle that fits into the big picture that you're trying to build. You may not really know what the full picture looks like. You have an idea, but that's where curiosity comes in, right? Something's interesting, you can find out more. So I think that kind of drives the natural motivation for me, because personally, I don't believe in this idea of like, if I join the company, right, someone else is responsible to tell me all the answers. I'm like, no one knows all the answers. Like, I mean, have you guys looked at the people around in the office? Like, no one knows the answer. You don't know. The other people also don't know. So everyone's like kind of trying to figure it out. So the way that I deal with it is not so much looking at it. I'm like, oh my God, all these people don't know. They're so stupid. Like, why am I here? If you think like that, right, I think that's a difficult way forward. So Maping's way of thinking is these are pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And that's why in Corporate Survivor, like where we start the program, you notice that I like to use the word like jigsaw puzzle to describe things. That's because like that's how I visualize it.